morning, everyone. Thank you again for the students who are here for the second day in a row. Thank you so much for coming to hear our candidates. So the candidates we have today are for the Franklin 5 House District. So they're running to represent Richford, see if I can get all these, Richford, Highgate, Berkshire, and Franklin in the State House of Representatives, which is the other half of the state legislature that makes the laws for the state of Vermont. There is no current what's called an incumbent candidate, meaning someone who's already in the office. So those of you who were here yesterday for the senators, we saw that two of them, Mr. Starr and Mr. Rogers, are actually currently in the Senate representing our district, and they're running to be re-elected. The two gentlemen who are currently representing us in the House are both retiring. And so there are actually 5 candidates who are running for those 2 House seats to succeed the 2 guys who are retiring. We have 3 of those candidates here today. So I would ask them first if they could just introduce themselves. And if you guys can use the handheld mic so the audience can hear you, that would be great. Oh, press the power button. The light turns green.
I don't usually need a microphone, but you think I do? Okay.
Okay. Yep.
Hi, my name's Linda Collins. I live in Richford, and I went to school here many, many years ago. I probably went to school with some of your parents, or grandparents, maybe, probably more like it. I'm just here to answer any questions, and hopefully you'll have some.
Hi, I'm Sharon Fagard. I live over on the Lost Nation Road in Berkshire. I am an Air Force brat, which means I grew up all over the world, all over the US. I've seen a lot of different places, a lot of different ways that places can be governed, people can be governed. And Vermont was the first place that ever felt like home. And I hope you'll ask questions because I never thought I'd run for office, and it's possible in this room there are future candidates.
Hello, I'm Daniel Nato from Highgate, and 10 years ago I was where you were. I graduated from Castleton University in 2014, and then I worked for Homeland Security, and now I'm here.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll start with the first question that I started with yesterday. So when I was talking to some of my students about this forum, a number of them were like, why should I care? Even if they're old enough to vote, like it doesn't affect me, why should I take the time to care about politics? So what would your response to be? Why should students care about what goes on in local elections?
You want to go first? No? You want to go? We could just set up a pattern.
Oh, if you want.
And we can alternate it and go back and forth.
I'm chairman of the Richford Select Board, and I can tell you that in a small town like this, one vote can make a difference. It's not a majority, it's one vote. So if you get out and vote, you can not complain about who you get for your leaders. That's why it's important. This is your future, this is your country. You need to vote. And it's fun.
Voting, some argue, doesn't make a difference. But at the federal level, sometimes it feels that way. But here at the local level, it can determine whether or not there are people who support affordable health care, access to child care, access to mental health or addiction services, police presence to keep communities safe. It can make a difference on whether or not you get somebody in office who has the ability to be creative enough and work hard enough to bring jobs back to our area. It impacts everything. It impacts your lives. And I know it's early and you guys are like, I'd rather be here than math. But it impacts everything. It impacts especially young people in a time when we're seeing a lot of changes. We're seeing a huge shift of the money that used to be accessible to the middle class, the working class, isn't really accessible to us anymore. And that's created a lot of the struggles, the emotional struggles, and the community struggles that we see here. We're seeing our tax system is changing to benefit the people who make $1 million or more or inherit big money.
The reason you need to vote is because, how do you say this? Right now, the older generation, people like the guys that are retired, they were 73 years old. All right. The reason you have to go out to vote for now is because you're going to be filling their position, and whoever wins that election is you're probably going to be stuck with them for the next 20 years. So you can vote now and get your person, because once they become incumbent, they're basically impossible to get rid of. Or you can not vote and deal with them for the next 20 years.
All right, thank you. Okay, who in the audience has a question? Mr. Brian.
I feel that mental health is a huge issue in our society today, but especially in our area. And it is characterized by the drug epidemic in our area and a lot of the crime. And with people with mental health, all of the laws are on their side. You could have an 8-year-old kid who needs mental health help, and the parents say it, and the school says it, and the crisis clinician says it, but if the kid themselves does not want to get help, then they don't have to get help. I feel that the law needs to change back in the other direction because a lot of people are self-medicating. What's your stance on mental health, and what will you do if you are elected?
Mental health is a huge issue, and it ranges from everything from addiction, which often starts as a self-medication because you don't like the way you feel inside. So, a couple beers makes me feel pretty good. And that becomes either a binge pattern or habitual use to not have to deal with the internal struggles. And the autonomy of a patient, I don't know those laws. I am not an incumbent, but I do know that Vermont is looking at bringing back some forced procedures. The one that I read about was electroshock therapy. I don't know how I feel about that. I know if it's done badly and it's not a well understood science or procedure, that it can cause more harm than good. I think that we need to remove the stigma from mental health. There's postpartum depression. There are services out there that are not income dependent. And a lot of people don't come forward with their struggles because they're shame. And I think one of the things we need to do is fund it and make it part of our everyday conversation so that people are not afraid to get help.
Yeah, like she said, it's a very complex issue, and one of the big issues is that it's an overlapping issue because you don't become depressed on your own. It's an economic issue. It's a psychological issue. It's where you were raised. It's where you developed, If you go to college and you graduate expecting to get a good high-paying job and you end up working at Walmart for 8 years, that's going to have a psychological impact. It's about your mindset and the issues that are compounded by basically your social and economic standards.
I'm going to talk to you instead of speculating what might happen to you when you're our age, and you've gone through all these things. I know from teaching for 35 years at Enosburg, and I taught 12th grade, the kids get depressed, and all I have for advice for you is go talk to somebody. Talk to your principal, talk to your teachers, talk to your guidance counselors, and get it out.
All right, Ross has a question.
Good question.
My name's Kayla. I'm in 11th grade. Are you for changing anything about gun laws?
Right now, our existing gun laws, because they've changed in the last couple of years, and now I believe anyway that they meet the requirements that they have. You know, we've gotten rid of the high capacity magazines. We've put in a lot of restrictions to stop school shootings. That's what the question really is about. When like I said, I was where you were 10 years ago. It never popped in my mind really that there could be a school shooting because they weren't even something you had to think about really. But now, you guys growing up, it's a legitimate threat. What? We have one every week in some part of the U.S. there's a school shooting. It's madness. It's something that your generation is just going to have to either fix or deal with. And that's why it's important to go out and vote, because that's the only way it's going to change. You have a golden opportunity to get 2 new selectmen or representatives in there. And
How many of you hunt? Raise your hands. Nobody? Just one? None of you guys hunt back there. Another one. They're going one at a time. He's right. Years ago, we didn't have to worry about school shootings. I don't want to take any Second Amendment rights away, but a few amendments to the law like they did might help a little bit. All of us have gone through doing the drills where you're hiding in the corner, and it's, you can't really relate to it, and you laugh, and you're like, oh, haha, but it's happened. So we need to find a way to compromise and have responsible people still have their guns. And this ties into the mental health issue we were just talking about. Maybe identify some issues before they happen. Schools certainly know that you sit in the teacher's room and you say, oh, that's the kid that's going to do it. So that's why I'm saying you need to get out and you need to talk to people, become part of the whole situation, and look out for your neighbors, your friends.
The balance between gun rights and school safety is, I'm not sure, ever going to be perfect. I know that people should be able to go to school and feel safe and be safe. What Linda said is, the mental health issue, and I understand that earlier question about patients having the right to refuse treatment. I know that we passed the extreme threat law, which says if somebody's planning to do harm, they can have their firearms removed for 6 months and be reevaluated. And another law was put on the books after the kid who was planning to shoot up Fairhaven, excuse me. There wasn't a law in the books to allow them to hold him. And they did pass one so that in the future, if there's somebody who gets apprehended before they've done harm that they're planning to do, they can be held, evaluated, and hopefully some of these laws will lead to more safety.
Okay, who else has a question?
What's your feeling about Act 46, the consolidation?
Oh boy. Guess it's my turn to go first. Act 46, I think, was well-intentioned. The Vermont Constitution says that every town shall have sufficient schools located in unless the General Assembly determines otherwise, that there are other ways to educate young people. And Act 46 provides these criteria to off-ramp, meaning if you meet these requirements, you don't have to do forced merger. And when I say a forced merger, I don't necessarily mean all the kids being shipped to another school. I mean decisions being made, the governance of the school. And the Agency of Education is not honoring those pieces of the law. So Franklin is an example, I've been there a lot, where they are performing well, they're not spending very much per student, and they're physically isolated from another school with capacity. They have pre-existing relationships with other schools so that they're providing all the services that students could want or need. And the Agency of Education isn't considering those aspects of the law to allow them to remain as they are, because they're doing a great job. They were rated the top K through 6 school in the state more than once. And I really think local control is important. What I don't see happening with Act 46 is rewarding schools that are fiscally conservative and responsible for doing a good job. And Richford has a pretty good reputation. And it's not punishing the schools that are spending more money than they need to. And those schools do exist. But they're not getting punished. And if Richford was having to merge with Enosburg, well, they have a lot of debt. Richford doesn't. I'm not for it.
I agree very much with Sharon. It's a very, I think, flawed bill. You know, I graduated from North Year Elementary. You know, my graduating class was 8. They no longer have a 7th, 8th grade. You know, that's one of the schools that will probably benefit from this. But for a lot of them, like Richford and others, it's a very poorly enforced or wrongly enforced rule.
After teaching for so long, I realized that a school has their own spirit, their own way of doing things, and it's very much part of the community. You know, all your basketball games, the whole town is here, everybody socializes, and it gives you a sense of belonging to something. So I voted against it. However, if the people in the district, which are these 4 towns, wanted it, I would vote for it. But all 4 towns in your district voted no. And then they voted again no. And they were still told they were going to do it. And I think I have an issue with telling you can vote on something, you vote on it, and then they say, well, we're not going to do it our way anyway. So that's a problem with me. And I didn't see a law in the bill that would make a big difference for kids. It was money, money, money. And that didn't appeal to me either. For years, you've gone to school down at the Voc Center in Enosburg. We've done things, you know, together, a lot of things that we've done together, and it's always worked out well. So even though personally I'm against it, I would vote for it if the people wanted to have it.
Thank you. I have a question based on some of the career intentions. A lot of my students, especially my seniors, intend to go into agriculture in some way, whether it's sugaring or dairy farming or something along those lines. And I know those industries are kind of struggling in Vermont. So if you're elected, what would you do to help ensure that there's a good future for agriculture in Vermont?
I guess it's my turn. It's my turn. Totally support the dairy industry. I've talked to a lot of farmers. They're working themselves to try to raise milk prices. They don't want to dump millions of pounds of milk in a silo every year. My thinking is we should encourage schools, prisons, summer food programs to use a lot more dairy products. I don't know what the hot lunch program is here, and I'm not gonna, I just know from where I came, but let's make macaroni and cheese with real cheese and real milk. Let's make pudding with real milk. Let's try to use butter. Let's try to use dairy products so there'll be more of a demand for it. And that might help a little bit.
Right. I think agriculture, going into farming, it's a way of life. It's not a job that somebody decides they want to try out someday. And these families have, gone back for generations. The Kinney farm right next door to us had to sell off its herd this March. Excuse me. And what I've seen up in this part of the state that's different from other parts of the state is that there's real strong dairy farming, there's sugaring. I'm not seeing a lot of diversity from that. And milk prices are heavily influenced at the federal level. The Farm Bill and the milk pricing has not been taken care of because of bickering between the parties at the federal level. And I hope farmers get it together so they can raise milk prices. I don't know that any of us have the ability to raise milk prices. We can do things to support farmers. We can really look at the state's rules about on-farm slaughter so that farms have the opportunity to maintain high safety standards and slaughter and sell meat from the farm. And look at ways that our soil, our particular environment here can support diversifying our farms more. You know, I don't know if anybody here knows how much pigs love whey. Whey-fed pork is delicious. Why aren't we raising pigs next to a lot of these dairy farms where we're dumping milk? You can turn your milk that is overproduced into bacon. There are just a lot of ideas out there. And something's got to give, because 4 years of low milk prices is really discouraging and driving out an awful lot of family farms.
I support farmers, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it. You're in trouble. My family used to own a dairy farm, you know? We had, up in Highgate. And truth be told, they're going under because they can't compete. The market isn't there anymore for it. And, it's not a very popular thing to say, but for a lot of you young people, you're going to have to move out of state because those jobs just are not going to be there.
All right, who else has a question? Mr. Flint.
You talk about farming going out of business, and then all the two of you, anyways, said dairy. You guys, you're going to go to Montpelier. I think we need something we don't have in this area. We don't market vegetables. We don't market. There's no market for sheep or meat. We don't have nothing. And Dan is right. Farming is dairying is hurting. And then I know buy more cheese, but the whole country is making milk. So how do you feel about supporting other kinds of ways to make to market stuff, and how would you go about marketing, having a market for vegetables and chickens and all the other things that are raised in Vermont? Like years ago, it used to be a sheep state, and then it went dairy. What's next? Is it goat, sheep?
I'll go first,
I think it's your turn to go first.
The issue is Vermont's always been a poor state. It's not the greatest agricultural land. It's not the greatest farming land. And the issue is Vermont is now competing on the national and world stage for basically everything, Your local foods are no longer really your local foods. They've been grown in other places, and other places can make and produce all those a lot cheaper. So there is no magic what's the next item, because no matter what you have, whether it be sheep, pig, cow, dairy, you're going to be competing on a globalized market where that stuff is not, you will not be able to undercut the opposition, the other growers from other parts of the country.
With conventional dairy, that certainly holds true. I know that some years ago, Vermont started getting into veal, and then Pennsylvania, with a shorter winter, kind of overwhelmed that market because they decided to get into veal. When I was about your age, that's when the trend started to have these CAFOs, confined agricultural facilities, where you have 500,000 chickens that are never out in the sunshine. And on the conventional level, this is a real issue in part When you have animals all shoved together and stressed out with no natural sunlight on their skin, they're more prone to illness. Stress causes illness, and so then you need more antibiotics. What Vermont has, what I've seen in other parts of the state, if you look at the Mad River Valley, there are a lot of diversified farms, and they're doing okay. They're actually doing pretty well. They're growing mixed produce, maybe some pork, maybe some chicken. A lot of them are organic. And what they have that I don't see up here yet is they have a market for organic local food. You know, the thing that is also interesting about organic with dairy, I talked to some farmers over there that have about 50 jerseys, grass-fed, organic. They're getting $33 a hundredweight. That's more than twice what a lot of conventional farmers are getting. Unfortunately, the organic dairy market is being overwhelmed out west where they have huge operations, and the feds continue to weaken the organic standards so that the large distributors of organic dairy are getting more of their milk out west where they have these huge confinement operations again, starting to look more like conventional. One reason why I'm keeping an eye on the trade agreement with Canada is they don't really have organic dairy production there. Their farmers are doing so well. They also don't allow a lot of the chemicals that are used here in our conventional dairy farming, so they are, but there may be a market there, and it's possible that organic American milk can start heading north, and that could be really helpful. And that farm that I just mentioned with the jerseys, Organic Valley or whatever their distributor is just halved what they'll take from them every 2 days. So instead of 4,000 pounds, it's 2,000 pounds. But diversifying is really important. We need to look at those possibilities. And we need to encourage schools and prisons, like Linda said, as well as local restaurants. There's one in Enosburg, Farm to Table, I think it's called. We need to encourage that. And you know the old sayings, the cliches, you are what you eat. That's absolutely true. If you're eating healthy, organic, local food, you're getting the most bang for your buck nutritionally. You're going to have fewer health problems.
I agree with you, Richard. We need to diversify, and we need to, in Montpelier, say, this is the way it's going to be. You're going to buy your apples in Vermont if you're a school. You're getting state aid. You're not going to buy them from Washington so that by the time they get there, you know, at hot lunch you get the little apples that really, when we have these huge, beautiful apples growing in the orchards. So we need to promote that. And on a positive note, if it makes you feel any better about your future, there are farmers in Franklin 5 who are in Montpelier, who are in Washington, and who are fighting for the prices, and there have been some, I think Senator Leahy got some money for the state to help them out. So they're working on it, and they're pushing the agriculture commissioner, what's his name, Tebbets, to do more in Washington, because we are on a global market, but we have to fight for our Vermont products. So there are people doing that.
Okay, I think we have time for about one more question. Who's got a question? Got a student over here. You could say your name and grade, please.
I'm Ryan, 9th grade. What laws would you like to be passed if you ever get voted in?
Ooh. Gee, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan.
That's a
Thanks
big one.
lot. It's my turn to go first. You know, I haven't ever served in our legislature before, and there are so many areas that we need to work on that I don't know what I would pass first, but I would like to really understand the numbers. I'd like to understand our budget. One of the things that really caught my attention this last year is that you guys, you drink soda? Everybody here drinks soda? Yeah. You know that 5-cent deposit? Mm-hmm. So not every single bottle gets returned. Not everybody gets their 5 cents back. There are a lot of bottles, in fact, millions of dollars worth of bottles that are never returned every year. And the bottle bill was passed in 1972. Anybody know what's been happening with that extra money that nobody was taking back? Whoever passed that law in 1972 thought it'd be a good idea to make it a gift to the bottling industry. So it basically was turned into a tax on Vermonters to benefit private industry that's already making a lot of money. So this year, a law was passed that those millions of dollars every year, instead of being gifted back to soda companies and beer companies, is going to be used to start cleaning up our water next year. And I wonder how many other backroom deals, because I'm sure that was a deal that was made so some lobbyists and campaign donors would be happy. But I'm curious about where there are other places that we're wasting money. And I would like to learn and find where those problems are, so that I want to run our government more efficiently, so that we are serving our communities better, our environment, our people, our families.
Oh, you want it? Oh, my. Basically, I want to redevelop northern Vermont. Basically, between Burlington and the Canadian border is the only place in Vermont with population growth. The rest of Vermont is drying up because they're all moving out of state or they're all moving up. So what I want to do is I want to redevelop Vermont, especially in the northern, how many of you been to St. Albans recently? 10 years ago, there weren't Chinese restaurants, there weren't microbreweries there. Swanton was just it was like Swanton is today. St. Albans, sorry about that. It's changing. Northern Vermont is changing. The next places are going to be Swanton and Highgate, and then hopefully eventually get out here. I would like to create a bill to develop those areas more.
I've been reading all the candidates' responses in the paper, and that's a great question, but we all want the same things. We all want lower taxes, we all want clean water, we all want opioids to go away. Everybody is in agreement. So to say one bill, I don't know, I'd support a lot of those bills. And once you're down there and you figure out the landscape and what really needs to be worked on, that would be where I'd go. I am interested in affordable health care, of course. I'm on the board of Notch here, and we offer affordable health care. If any of you can't afford to go to the doctor, they have a sliding fee scale. Don't ever stay home and be sick, because you can go to your Notch clinic. I'm obviously interested in education and your future, whether you go to college or not. You don't always have to go to college. I don't want to make your teachers mad, but there are many things you can do. I want to make sure that you all have a job in the future, somewhere here, somewhere else. And I'm interested in the opioid crisis, of course.
All right, thank you. I think we have time for a short closing statement from each of the candidates.
Go ahead.
You go first.
God.
Talk for me too. Tell them what I want.
I think that what Linda said is right. We all want to work for the communities. If you read the newspapers, and maybe you don't because you are all in the electronic age, young people, you can learn a lot about candidates, whether or not they're doing the research, or they're even thinking about things thoroughly, or bothering to answer the questions. The Messenger and the Courier each ask a question of candidates every week. I am putting all of our answers on my website so that for voter education purposes, and by the way, that little kid on the steps, he's good? Okay, sorry. But for voter education purposes, a lot of people I think don't vote because it feels like gambling. You look at the ballot and you're like, well, I don't know, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. I don't know who these people are. How do I know? Well, learning about how we answer those questions is a good way to get an idea of who we are. And you can go to my website. You can read it all in one place. Nothing's been altered. You should get out and vote and help determine the future.
You should vote for me because I'm young. I'm like you. 10 years ago, I was there. I understand what your issues are, and I understand what your problems are, what your worries are. I'm thinking of the future of Vermont. I'm trying to move Vermont forward and keep us on this forward path. I'm not thinking about recycling cans and all that older technical stuff. I'm trying to move Vermont in broad strokes.
You should vote for me because I'm old. I've seen it all, right? And I know it needs to be changed. I can say one thing nobody else can say. I think I'm the only candidate that 3 of my former students are running, and one's running against me. So you guys, I mean, get out there, run for office. Right now there's 5 empty spots for Justice of the Peace in Ridgeford. Write yourselves in when you go vote. Maybe you'll get it. You can marry people, and you can count votes, and it'll be a start. But get out there and do things.
All right, thank you all for coming, for taking time out of your busy schedules to come talk to us and answer our questions. And thank you guys, students, especially those of you who are here for the second day in a row. Thank you for being a great audience and very respectful and attentive. So stick around until announcements, until the bell rings. And I believe if you have individual questions for the candidates, they'd be willing to stick around for a few minutes.